This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake.
And I'm Alex Chambers. And Tyler, I am really excited that you wanted to talk about Marx's labor theory of value. The basic idea, which I'm sure you know, is that as the commodity gets abstracted from use value...
Oh boy, Alex, I think we got some wires crossed. Oh. I wanted to talk about Karol Lagodzki's new novel set in Soviet-occupied Poland during the Cold War, not about the tenets of the communist system.
Okay. We also have an NPR Tiny Desk competition hopeful, Bloomington band The Foolins.
Yeah, they've developed a pretty great sound around lead singer Grace Newland's amazing, unexpected vocal style.
Very cool. Also, I had a minor existential crisis about arts reporting.
Ooh.
Why do interviews with artists and creatives when wars, famine, and cruelty seem to be everywhere we look?
I hope you found a pretty good argument, or we're in trouble.
I did find a good argument, but we're still in trouble. This is public media, after all.
Sheesh. Well, let's put that aside and preview some great artwork at the Midwest Print Fest.
Let's do that. Coming up on Nice Work after this.
This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake. Controlled Conversations is a new novel by Bloomington author Karol Lagodzki. Set in Poland mostly in the summer of 1982, it follows three people as they navigate a period of state-enforced martial law from December of 1981 until July 1983. Antek, a member of the Solidarity anti-authoritarian movement, is on the run after escaping incarceration as a political prisoner. Roman is a major in the secret police trying to find Antek with an agenda all his own. And Amelia, a switchboard operator before the crackdown, now additionally tasked with listening in on conversations. When connecting calls, Amelia recites to the callers on the line the same disturbing phrase each time. This conversation is being controlled. Here's my, let's call it a talk, with Karol Lagodzki about controlled conversations. The novel starts in the summer of 1982, but pretty quickly it flashes back to a scene in December 13th of 1981 when soldiers show up to the telephone company where one of the main characters, Amelia, works and announces martial law has been instituted in Poland. Tell me about this moment in Polish history and its relationship to, larger global geopolitics.
For sure. 1981 in Poland was a period of time when the Solidarity movement that you might have heard of was breaking out. It was at a point where it was being seen by the Soviets as a threatening force within the satellite states to the west of them. And it's disputed whether the Soviets forced the Polish government at the time to do this, or if it was the Polish government being proactively trying to prevent the Soviets from encroaching. So we don't know for sure if the martial law was instituted because of the direct request or order, or because the Polish government was being proactive. Either way, it likely did prevent the direct intervention from the Soviets, like you might have seen in the 50s and 60s in Hungary, in Czechoslovakia, for example. That's not to say that the martial law was in any way a good thing. People suffered, people died, people were imprisoned. It started a set of changes that then continued to happen throughout the next decade or so in Poland and then throughout the Eastern Bloc. In a way, it was kind of an inflection point that then ultimately led to the talks of the Round Table between the opposition and the government in Poland, and then to the power sharing agreement in 1989, and ultimately to the first relatively free elections in Poland in 1989-90.
Do you see the Solidarity movement, the threads of what they were trying to do through all of that?
Correct, right.
The book is set almost entirely in the summer of 1982. Amelia works as a switchboard operator, and, she's meant to listen in on conversations that she's connecting. And that's not something that's meant to be clandestine. Every time she connects a call, she tells the people on the line exactly what's going on, saying, this conversation is being controlled. Was that really how it went down in that era?
It did. With the benefit of hindsight, it strikes me as a little strange, right? Because if you wanted to surveil people, you wouldn't tell them. The real reason appears to be that you didn't want people to actually have these conversations, right, in the first place. So it was a way to chill the exchange of information, both any sort of clandestine, regime conversation that might be taking place, or even a free exchange of information between citizens, right? It was a way to terrorize the citizenship into just not talking to each other, not having communication. So all conversations were being controlled, not just conversations between potential partners in crime. You might call your mother and you're being listened to, right?
I'm curious about the language. Unfortunately, we're used to the term, your conversation is being monitored. Unpack controlled as the word that was chosen for that.
It's a direct translation of the phrase that was being used then. Rozmowa kontrolowana. Controlled conversation, right? And it's on purpose because it literally was being controlled, proactively controlled, not just listened to and then acted on afterwards. When we talk about authoritarian movements, whether it's a fascist movement or a left-wing movement, purposes or goals are the same, right? It's to maintain power within a small faction and make the rest of the population behave.
You follow sort of three main characters in the book. That's Antek, he's an active member of the Solidarity movement, and then Roman, who is in the secret police, and then Amelia, who's a switchboard operator who kind of gets drawn into this bigger story. And the plot really revolves around 20,000 American dollars that are meant to get to Antek for the larger Solidarity movement. Kind of set the table for us about what these characters are going through as they reach this moment.
When the action of the book kicks off, we are presented with a situation in a telephone station on the night that the martial law starts. Amelia and one of her colleagues are on the phone. They're just doing their job at the point. And the secret police come in and they find out that the martial law has been declared. And from that point on, the station is militarized and they have to listen to conversations and so on. Then we fast forward a few months. And by that point, Amelia has been fully kind of used to her new function, new job. And she does what she's told. She listens to conversations. But she notices that her colleague is not doing that. That's something that this older colleague had to decide to do for herself. Amelia doesn't feel at that point that she really does have much of a choice. A set of circumstances occur that then force Amelia to face up to the fact that she's being complicit in terrorizing her fellow Poles.
She's a tool of the state.
She is. She also becomes aware that a person that she really cares about is on the other side. And she has to pick sides. Antek he's an engineer by training. And all he really wants to do is build ships. And he could do it every day, all day, every day, and be happy. He also has a relationship with his wife, Dorota, whom he really loves. But he kind of loses sight of the fact that there is more to life than political opposition, right? And so the relationship suffers. And when we meet Antek, he's on the run because he has escaped from prison and he's trying to save the money that belongs to the opposition because he's the treasurer. He's the treasurer of that specific part of the union because there are many different chapters. And so he's trying to save that money. And $20,000 at the time was a lot of money that could buy a lot of printing presses in Poland in 1981. At the same time, he's then running into his wife, who is almost his former wife by that point. Mm-hmm. And events ensue that then lead them to confront their relationship and what the problems in it might be as well. So I think of this book really as kind of like two different love stories that happen in parallel.
One of the things I really like about this book is that for the people in the book, the stakes are very high. But like you said, this $20,000, it's just something that is part of one chapter of a much larger solidarity movement. Give me like a notion of what it would have meant in terms of like what you would do day to day, but also what it means for your own safety and your livelihood to be a treasurer in the solidarity movement.
So in 1981, when martial law was introduced, pretty much all the brass of Solidarity it was called at the time interned, right? But they were imprisoned. So yeah, I mean, it immediately meant prison, unless you could get out of it, which Antek did. And a reader will find out that it wasn't by accident. Mm-hmm. As far as personal safety, like I said, a lot of people did die. By a lot, I don't mean necessarily thousands, but hundreds did. In Antek's case, someone of his stature in the union would likely be kept in prison for the duration until they couldn't, right? Martial law was suspended in 1983. That really didn't mean much. Even after 1993, the secret police did do their job. You might want to look up the name of Jerzy Popiełuszko, who was a Catholic priest who was murdered by the secret police after the martial law was suspended because he was preaching from the pulpit things that they didn't like.
So the solidarity movement in Poland, politically, it's not as if it was a capitalist movement.
No.
They were obviously, fighting against a Soviet state, a notionally communist state. So kind of unpack the motivations beyond, beyond just the oppression of having another country.
It was an anti-autocratic movement.
It was an anti-autocratic movement.
There was a very wide spectrum of left versus right idealists within the movement, right? What they had in common is they didn't want to be ruled from the outside by an autocrat. And I think you see that today in politics in Poland because people who have grown out of the solidarity movement are in diametrically opposite places politically in Poland today. They might be on the left side, on the right side, anywhere in between. I think that's something that we need to remember here in the US as well, that we shouldn't ever conflate an economic system with the political system. So when we talk about communism or socialism, you can have a very democratic socialist country, or you can have a super oppressive capitalist country, which is somewhere where we're heading.
I think about, as I read these characters that are in the solidarity movement, that's a much more daunting uphill task than what we face, I think. We get discouraged about the ability to do anything. And then you read in this book where they're in the crackdown. It's already happened. Changing things is harder than it would be for us in our state right now. And yet they're still doing it. And we are largely apathetic.
So the apathy is what part of the problem is, right? But I also maybe dispute the statement that their situation was harder than ours. I think we're at a point where we should wake up to the fact that we are in a crackdown. It's just more subtle. There's more technology involved. And we don't necessarily know, not everyone knows about every single part of the crackdown, right? So if you're not personally involved in immigration, for example, you might not be aware of the denaturalization office that the Trump administration runs, and that they have quota of denaturalizing naturalized citizens, monthly, yearly quota now. And so my speaking out takes on a different meaning to me now than it might have in the past because I'm a natural citizen.
There's intrigue in this book. I mean, that's the plot that moves it forward. But through Emilia specifically, you get a lot of real life texture and the everyday experience of Poland at this time. And, a lot of the conversation is about food or food scarcity, except for beer, which seems to be plentiful. But it seems like a really fraught time. And you decide to put these two people who've known each other for a very long time, and they find love in this time. Long dormant feelings, stuff that they'd never really addressed before. So what do you think in terms of the way Kalina and Emilia's relationship develops? Did that finally happen, them recognizing each other because of the tension, because of the heightened moment that this book takes place in?
Yeah, I will leave that to the reader to decide. There is a parallel there between the transgressive nature of underground opposition and, at the time, still transgressive nature of homosexual relationships, right? Even as late as today, there are parties in Poland that are running on the platform of homophobia, right? So that still exists there. There are parties that don't do that, thankfully, right? And thankfully, right now, the Polish parliament is not a right-wing parliament, even though the president is.
But that's recent.
That's very recent, yes.
Amelia is the last one to kind of awaken from kind of a little bit of a stupor. It seems that not only does she find love, but that when she finds love, the person she found love with already knew about it and was already involved in some of those transgressive behaviors. So I'm just curious about how you kind of thought about shepherding Amelia's awakening.
So I think one thing to realize is that in surveillance states, you don't really know a person that you might think you know. Parents don't know their children, and the children don't know the parents, right? Children make perfect spies for the state.
Because they're just upfront and they honest and they see something and they say it.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So when I grew up in Poland in the 80s, my parents, my peers' parents, were not free with us about their views or perspectives. They couldn't be. It wasn't safe. And so unless you could be absolutely certain that the person you speak to is not going to blurt out anything, even on accident, right? Or that you're not being overheard, you kept certain things to yourself, even within families, even within very close relationships. So it shouldn't be surprising that even though they were close friends, Emilia didn't know everything about Kalina and vice versa.
Kalina is part of this solidarity movement, and yet she knows that her dear friend Amelia is on the phone as an apparatus of the state, part of the controlling of the state. They don't hold Amelia to account until Amelia wakes up and decides that she should be part of this too. Their relationship to her is really forgiving. And I wonder if you saw that a lot in this era.
You did, because people had to live next to each other, right? You had neighbors who did certain things to survive, right? My aunt was a card-carrying member of Communist Party to get an apartment, right? You did things to survive, to have a place to live, to have enough to eat. And so I think, at least, that there was more understanding of imperfections or moral great choices at the time. And even if you did things to protect yourself from people that you might not entirely trust, you might have lent a bit more of a longer leash to their behavior that might be more self-serving. One perspective to keep in mind is that even today, right, when you think about Polish population, there are people who are still alive and go about their lives who were in the Communist Party, who might have done certain things that might have hurt other people. Those other people are still alive and going on with their lives. Have they forgiven? I don't know about that, right? But you've got to move on. Especially when a relationship happens or starts so early in life, right? As in between Emilia and Kalina. It started early in school. They've gotten to know each other, became good friends. The compromises that one of them was making were really guided by the fact that she was a daughter of a party apparatchik, right? And so Kalina couldn't have really held against her the fact of who her mother was. At least that's my read on the character, right? But I would love to hear another reader's perspective on it as well.
Everyone knows a little bit. They have an idea. And unless you are an apparatus of the state, everybody just kind of keeps quiet. I feel like it creates like a small town with a lot of secrets.
See, I think you hit upon a really important point there. It does happen in a small town where everyone knows everyone. And everyone knows who sleeps with whom, or at least they think they know.
You're right.
Especially when you're a phone operator who listens to everybody's conversations.
I love a good bittersweet melancholy relationship. And that's absolutely what's going on with Antek and Dorota. There's a touch of Casablanca in it. When a movement gets in front of love, that's the one time we can accept a breaking of a heart, is if you're doing it for a greater cause. There's a paragraph that I think really explains, and probably for a lot of people that have been in social movements, probably feels very real. So could you read that paragraph about Dorota and Antek?
Dorota and he had shared a home and a cause back then. Poland, democracy, solidarity. But they hadn't shared a bed in months. The passion they once had for each other had been consumed by these higher needs. Within 3 years of marriage, lovers became comrades, like steam becomes water.
Can you talk about their relationship and what you think about when you put those two together?
I think any writer who will deny that they fall in love with their characters will be a liar. I love them both. I do love that relationship as well. And I think because I do fall in love with my characters, to me they feel real. They feel like they could exist. And I hope that the reader gets it as well. I hope the reader also feels like these could be real people, right? So I think that any human being understands only as much as they think they understand. What I mean by that is that in Antek's mind, what he was doing for the cause might have been also for Dorota, right? You know, in his mind, what he was doing was to make her life better as well. The way she understood what her life meant to her, or what it being better meant for Dorota, might have been very different than it was for Antek, right? The interpretation of what good life is might be what got in between the two of them.
So most of this book takes place in Zygmuntowa?
It takes place in Zygmuntowa, which actually is based upon the little town I grew up in Poland.
Which is?
Augustów.
Augustów. So I was going to ask, it feels very lived in and very real. It feels like you've been in this space. Can you talk a little bit about Zygmuntowa, this little town and this area that it's in?
What appealed to me about setting the novel in a place like that was that it is a small town where everyone knows everyone. And it's a town where there's not a lot of jobs to be had. Most of the jobs are tourism. There are a couple factories, maybe 2 or 3 different factories, but overall, it's not a very well-to-do town. That, I think, creates an opportunity to portray real people who struggle with everyday things, in addition to struggling with an oppressive government. So it was important to me to have people who we could relate to. Not some sort of, superheroes and generals and secret agents of nth magnitude. There needed to be real people, at least to me. And having lived in a place that I based it on allowed me to envision that space and see them move through the space, move through those daily activities from house to house, from lake to lake. It is a beautiful place. Today, it is still very much a touristic spot, not quite as poor as it used to be. Mm-hmm. Also, right next to it, there's a primeval forest where I spent a lot of time. It's just beautiful. And if those who are listening to this ever find themselves in Poland, don't forget the nature in Poland. It's worth seeing. Don't just stop at cities. It would be a miss.
Can you tell me a little bit about your time in Poland? I mean, you left Poland when you were 20. What year was that?
It was 1990.
In 1990. Can you tell me a little bit about growing up in Poland and how that informed this book?
I think there's one event that is important to mention, or 2 different facts that are important to mention. One fact is that even though none of the characters resemble her in any way, my mother was a phone operator at the time who had to listen to conversations. And so when I woke up on the morning of December 13th, 1981, I was 11. I was under orders from my mom to take my sister to church. And my usual modus operandi was that I would turn the TV on, watch some cartoons, and then get out of bed, and we would just drag ourselves to church on Sunday morning. Because she worked sometimes nights, sometimes early mornings, on weekends as well.
Just like Amelia, her schedule seemed to rotate.
Right. And so that morning, I turned the TV on, but instead of cartoons, I saw this guy with dark glasses on, with a military uniform, saying things about war. And you have to understand that in Polish martial law, the term for martial law is state of war.
State of war.
State of war.
Okay.
So in my 11-year wisdom, I had to decide, am I going to go to church with my sister when there's a war going on, or stay home and risk my mother's wrath? So the fear of my mother won. And so I grabbed a kitchen knife from the stand, wrapped it up in the paper because I was afraid of the edge, and put it in my pocket, and grabbed my sister and went to church. From that point on, that memory never left me. And it was probably one of the reasons I had to write the book. I was just an average kid growing up. Went to school, high school, graduated, and then I wanted to apply to university in Poland. At the time, you could only apply to one place at a time, right? One specific university, one specific direction within the university.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I applied to Polish philology in the University of Gdańsk. I did not get in. What was waiting for me then, it was 1989, before the changes still. I had an idea the changes would happen at that point. So what was waiting for me then was mandatory 2-year military service.
If you don't get into university, that's kind of what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
At
that point was not anymore. Right. And I knew that I would not do well in the military. Look at me. I'm not a military type, and so I did everything I could to evade the military service, and that's really the primary reason I came to the U.S. I mean, I'll just be honest. Yes, I came here for school, but the school here was a way to not go to the military. And now that folks will judge me for it, but I have no regrets.
And a military that's representing the interests of the Soviet Union that none of your values align with anyway. Yeah. Your bio reads interesting. Tell me about some of the stuff you did between leaving Poland and writing this book.
I did a few things.
It seems like.
And I believe that it's important to try different things in life. And settling down early on a direction, I don't see a point in that. One day you're going to die, and at that point you're going to look back and see all the things you've done, all the experience you've had, all the people you've loved, who have loved you. And if that is a very small number, you might have some regrets. And so while regrets are a waste, because you can't change the past, right? I hope that I'm going to have as few as I can. So I've gone to college here in the U.S., and so I graduated with a degree in sociology. And then I thought I was going to be a sociologist for a while. I went to grad school at UIC in Chicago. In my wisdom, I decided that I was going to specialize in gerontology. What happened is that my advisor retired. He was very old.
That's not the least bit ironic.
No, not at all. And so at that point, and it's not his fault at all, at that point I was getting really to a place where I think a lot of graduate students get, right? Where I was very poor, I was really tired of being poor, and I was struggling with my thesis. And that was just the last nail in the coffin. And so I decided that I was going to stop doing that. After that, I've done a couple of different things. I thought that to provide for a family, I need to get an MBA. I do business for a living because writing doesn't pay. And so it allows me the opportunity to have this mental capacity and the mental health to do what I really want to do when I have time to do it, which is right.
You left Poland in your 20s, and this was in 1989. So a lot has changed since then. What's your relationship to Poland now?
I haven't been back enough. It's nostalgic in a lot of ways. I miss it quite a bit. The older I get, the more I miss it, which is probably a sign of getting old.
So nostalgia is really what, is there antipathy? Is there any leftover anger from growing up in that era?
I have no anger toward Poland whatsoever. I think it's a great place, great people, great culture, even better food. It's a place with a lot of history, some of it a very sad history, very fraught history, but also history that informs its people and makes its people what they are.
Thanks so much to Karol Lagodzki for talking with me about controlled conversations and filling in some rather large holes in my knowledge of Eastern European politics. I have it on good authority that there are still a couple of copies of Controlled Conversations on the shelf at Morgenstern Books on the east side of Bloomington. And if it's not there, you can order it from them probably, but also from Sudbury Press. This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake.
This is Nice Work. I'm Alex Chambers. I had the chance to talk with Jesse Thorn in October of 2025, just as we were launching Nice Work. Jesse Thorn is the host of the arts and culture show Bullseye, which was celebrating its 25th anniversary. The conversation came at a good time. I was worrying about things. Bullseye has been around for 25 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm part of a team that's starting a brand new local arts and culture show. And we are in an especially intense political moment right now in this country and in the state of Indiana. And I'm just hoping you can kind of help me with this sort of minor existential crisis that I'm having, which is that should we be even doing culture interviews right now? Like, shouldn't we just be watching the news 24/7 and listening to the news 24/7?
You know, I was on tour doing comedy the night of the election, and we were on stage, and I was on tour as the sidekick to my friend John Hodgman, and we had this question: how do we do comedy for those people in this audience who are upset by the results of this election, or who are just obsessing over the results of the election? And ultimately, the answer was, we went on stage and said, you cannot engage with the world if you do not allow yourself enjoyment. And there is a very strong argument to be made that there are people out there in the news whose goal is to take enjoyment away from you. And so I truly believe in my heart that art is essential to who we are as human beings. And that is as true in scary or turbulent times as it is in peaceful times, and perhaps even more so. I tell you what, like, my father was an organizer. He was a veterans peace organizer. He had been served in the Navy and was one of the founders of an organization that came to be called Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And what he always told me was, if you can't laugh about it, what the heck is the point? He used saltier language, more suitable to the Navy.
Sounds, I imagine.
And that, you know, I grew up with a stepmother who grew up in the Troubles in Northern Ireland with a single parent and 7 siblings, where they had meat once a week and were assaulted by police officers and nuns regularly. And I don't know anyone funnier. So if you can't give yourself the moment of respite that is enjoying your life sometimes, you will break down real fast.
Is there something more than entertainment in interviews with, say, entertainers?
Well, I mean, for one thing, Alex, I genuinely believe that entertainers are artists.
Sure. Yes. I didn't mean to. Sure.
But I don't mean that you suggested otherwise, but that's something that I think gets lost sometimes. I think one of the reasons that I like to call Bullseye an arts and culture show, when some people like to call it a pop culture show, is that I believe that art is art. My definition of art is essentially those things that human beings do that are not necessary for them to live or reproduce. And that includes things that are funny. That includes the things that are under the rubric of high art. Barbara Kruger comes on Bullseye in addition to La Russell, the rapper. I believe that all those things are art and have meaning in people's lives. So that's the first thing I would say. It's let go of the idea that you're not doing something fancy just because you're talking to a rapper. You know what I mean? Or listening to someone talk to a rapper.
Right.
And the sub piece of that is that we are all art makers in our lives. And I don't think that doing it as a career is the sole definition of what art making is. I have a pretty generous understanding for me of what art making is. I think that your journaling is art making. I think that your prayer could be art making. And to hear from someone who is masterful at making art, which is what I believe of our guests, whether or not you love hip hop or comedy or classical music or whoever that guest, whatever world that guest may come from, hearing from someone who is masterful can change your life in a practical way, in an everyday way, to learn where creating comes from and how creating happens can change not just how you appreciate the art of others, but how you create art in your own life. Even if the art in your own life has more to do with plating asparagus than it does with, dropping hot beats.
Awesome. That's
great. I mean, my beats are fire. I want to be clear. My beats are fire, but
no doubt. Jesse Thorne. His show, Bullseye, airs on WFIU 2 on Saturday evenings at 7.
Some printmakers, live music, and a steamroller in a parking lot. These are just some of the ways Jim Beck of Bad Knees and Rachel Gressley of Hideout Press want to get Midwestern printmakers out of their print shops into community. It's called Mini Midwest Print Fest and Steamroller Big Show, and it's back for a second year. It's Saturday, May 16th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 902 West Kirkwood Avenue. The Mini Print Fest brings together printmakers and art vendors from around the Midwest, including Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan. The fest gives attendees a chance to get in on the fun with the help of Bad Knees and other vendors.
Live t-shirt printing inside throughout the event. So if you bring your own t-shirt, preferably clean or new, we will print something on it for you. We'll probably have 4 or 5, maybe even more for this print fest. And you pick it and you can watch us print it and see the process there. If you want to buy a $5 blank, we'll have those available.
Rachel took inspiration from the print fests she attended when she was a part of the Chicago Printmakers Collective, specifically the Steamroller. It's a massive display of relief printing of former printmaking onto a large piece of fabric, but this time using the steamroller as weight. Above all, this is what Rachel hopes attendees get out of the event:
For me, it's always just maybe a better understanding and appreciation for printmaking. I think there's a lot of misconception about what it is and how it works and how much work goes into it. And I think that having artists of a lot of different backgrounds and spaces coming to a new place just kind of creates a great moment for people to learn and be exposed to new styles, people, and opinions, which I think is really what I'm looking for.
And for Jim, it's about having an alternative type of market that brings together Bloomington.
I've always wanted to have something like this. Bloomington has many farmers markets, as we know, but maybe an alternative type of market that isn't in the morning, goes into the late afternoon, evening, and just gives a space for people to hang out and enjoy each other's company.
For Nice Work, I'm Carl Templeton.
Carl Templeton is a producer on our show. I'm Alex Chambers, and this is Nice Work.
This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake. And each year, right about this time, somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 musical artists break out their camcorders and make a video, hoping to land a coveted spot on NPR's Tiny Desk. Since the contest started back in 2014, its reputation has only been embiggened as artists like Galen Lee and Tank and the Bangas have found large audiences after winning the competition. Bloomington band the Foolins have thrown their collective hats in the ring a few times now, and they're at it again this year. Two members of the band, husband and wife, Grace Newland and Mark Hyduk, talked to me about their music and their very professionally produced Tiny Desk concert submission videos. So I guess first off, tell me, who are the Foolins?
Sure. I'm Grace Newland of the Foolins. Formerly the Grace Newland and the Who Ya Foolins, which Mark coined for us back when the band began.
It was too much.
It was a mouthful.
Whenever we played live, somebody would say, and here's Grace Newland and they were looking at a piece of paper that said Who Ya Foolins, but that phrase makes no sense. So they would freeze. So we're like, well, we can't really do that anymore, can we?
It is that Who Ya Foolins it's a funny name.
Grace Newland and the Who Ya Foolins. It rolls right off the tongue. But
Good.
apparently if you read it, it throws you upside down.
So Grace Newland of the Foolins, and with me is Mark Hyduk, resident drummer.
And who else constitutes the Foolins?
We have J.R. McIntyre and Ben Frazier. They kind of swap both playing lead guitar and bass.
How would you guys describe your sound?
We were hoping you were going to listen to the album and tell us.
Oh, man.
Because we don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of, Grace always says it's like bluesy Americana rock.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she started off playing at Max's Place and, coffee house. Back when Max's was on 7th Street, coffee shops, kind of open mic, singer-songwriter stuff. And Ben, JR, and I kind of come from different places in rock and roll. Like I'm kind of like the hair metal of the 80s into alternative 90s. Ben's prog rocky. JR's maybe a little more, math rock, harder rock, the Mastodon, angle. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but it's like adult contemporary rock with a little bit of attitude.
I've never considered myself a singer, honestly. Like I've always leaned more into learning my finger picking and these other things, and I know that my voice is not like her traditional pop music sound, right? I was really into Dylan for a long time, so I've also leaned into the idea that your voice doesn't have to be this perfect example of what a singer should sound like. By no means am I comparing my voice to Bob Dylan's at all, but that concept that you just need it to sound like what you need it to feel like. And I hope that comes through in an authentic way and, not like a forced way, but it's something that I've kind of evolved into acceptance of.
I can hear some influences. I mean, Wings.
Are you serious? Dude, that's why. So one of our like, kind of when we got together, romantically as a partnership, she's a very normal person. I'm a little bit over the top as the drummer, funny stereotypes. But, she was, I was leaning on her for a little while to start dating. And one of what kind of like culminated was us and like 3 or 4 friends drove to Cincinnati to see Paul McCartney. And it was kind of like, has been a special, like, so we've seen him a couple times live. That's been a special to our partnership. So the
and
fact
the
that you
sound.
said, and
back
the music,
in those days, that was a CD in my CD player in my car. Was like Ram and clearly like Beatles, Delta Blues,
which you can hear,
you can hear a little, and I think that's really refined a lot of my picking style. I believe lyrically, I mentioned Bob Dylan being a pretty big influence. Classic rock, Neil Young, and then more recently like Alabama Shakes, some influence of like some soul. And then honestly, like the sound has developed a lot with the Foolins, just with Ben and JR and Mark kind of influencing kind of from their own perspectives and tastes as well. So it's the next record's going to feel different.
What drew you guys to submit to the Tiny Desk concert?
I mean,
you got to have something to do.
Well,
you can't just get together every Tuesday night for 3 hours and play some music. It's nice to have a goal, and that's for me at least. I don't know.
And a long shot dream. Like, I mean, you see some killer musicians coming on to, not even just like the big time ones who've already made it. Like you see the Anderson Paaks and you see people who have become so influential, I think, in the things that we listen to now, even in this tiny little studio playing 2 or 3 songs. And that's all it takes for them to like just get their name on the map. And so this isn't like it's not really a goal for us to get our names on the map. It's like, let's use this as an excuse to throw some cameras up, throw some mics up, put a project together, again, back to like having like an artifact that says, here's something we made, share it with the world.
Yeah, that's what I meant as a goal, is to have something just as a band to work towards.
Yeah, totally.
And an excuse to tag NPR in it, right? A couple years ago when we submitted Joy, we had an intro that was kind of built in to kind of like introduce it. And
it was sort of a Wheel of Fortune style carnival wheel where you're going to pick which song you're going to play, but every single song was Joy.
Every single song was Joy.
That's Ben and Grace, having that production background, knowing like we got to catch them somehow. And they actually, we opened up the big submission montage that they send out to, and so I don't know how we heard about that. Did they email us?
Lauren texted me. It was like, hey, did you know that NPR Tiny Desk featured you in one of their videos? And I was like,
we're like, what? We watch it, and it says like straight up the Foolins, Bloomington, Indiana. And then Ben doing this spin and Grace saying, what are we going to play today, Ben? And it says Foolins, Bloomington, Indiana. I'm getting goosebumps again thinking about it. Because then like 24 hours later, like 200,000 people have seen us lead off this. And it's like, whoa.
No, they didn't play our song.
We get to retire,
But we get to retire knowing we've been featured on NPR. No, but like that's kind of become our secondary goal. Like let's kick off every video with like something that they might just use.
The song you guys submitted to Tiny Desk Concert this year is Edge of a Wave.
One day you'll fade away and I will remain here. I'm not the one you should worry will disappear.
It's not just a blues number. Again, I don't know how to describe it, but tell me about Edge of a Wave.
It's kind of, I think you're circling around it, a mood. It's like a mood.
Yeah.
Very bass driven. It's got like a tumultuous kind of guitar solo, gritty lyrics and vocals. It's probably about as like raspy as I get. At face value, it kind of comes off as just sort of like a badass rock and roll song about resiliency, right? But it was actually like influenced from a writing perspective from looking at, surprisingly enough, like global warming, but written from the perspective of like the earth as opposed to like our human-centric, like ego-driven perspectives.
Let's just say you get picked. What does that do? What does that feel like?
Gosh, have we even thought about that? We'd have to adjust to playing live music in front of more than 40 people. I would love it. I don't know about my wife. But,
I'm the introvert of the gang.
Yeah. It would probably require us to practice a little bit more and get tighter.
Kick our butts into shape.
I mean, I don't want to sound too corny, but it's true. I'm playing music with my wife and two of my best friends. Like,
Losing Tiny Desk Concert isn't losing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I think it's measured that way.
Yeah, there are 10,000 losers and one winner.
It's just it would just all be a bonus or a perk just to know that know that the music means something to somebody else.
Grace, Mark, thanks for coming in, and thanks for submitting to Tiny Desk Concert.
Heck yeah, thank you, Tyler.
You can find the Foolins on any of those streaming services I hear so much about these days, or you can find them at thefoolins.com. Nice Work is a production of WFIU, WTIU, and Indiana Public Media. You can find us at ipm.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.